Hey guys, so this is just a quick video that I wanted to make. I say quick, it's like 13, 15 minutes of inefficient world line strategy. It is unscripted, unwritten out, so I will say I'm a lot, I'll stutter, I'll just kind of be saying what's on the top of my mind. So forgive me for my poor speech throughout this video, but I will have timestamps down in the progress bar of the video of what I'm talking about, so you guys can skip through and see, what I'm saying. If you want to just jump straight to the strategy, if you want to hear my explanation of why other strategies don't work, then you can skip this, stay through the video, watch that. But yeah, enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in a second. They have a new world lines unit as they usually do. We gotta get that. We all gotta get it. It's big in the meta, and then wait maybe one or two updates, and then it's never gonna be used again because it's useless. But anyways, I was here just to share what I believe is probably one of the most efficient strategies for clearing world lines quickly. And it does not, one of the good things is it does not require the new stuff, the new Escanor Memoria, the new Escanor uh, Vanguard Familiar, which does all that stuff with the disabling weather effects and all that for Escanor. But this video is for people who don't have that. So basically, the strategy is revolving around Zoro. Um, having Monarch on him is nice because there are a lot of stages that will reduce his fire damage and he just won't do enough damage. So having Monarch on him as a failsafe kind of is nice, but also just in general because he's such a cheap unit. The reason you use him is because when you start the game, you start with $600. The reason I just can't place him now is because of Infinite Tsukiyomi, but we'll get into that later. But basically, the strategy for most normal stages is just to turn on autoplay, set it as close to the track as you can so that Zoro will be actually clearing the stages quickly, and then sort of just letting it do its thing. And there's a few things that you do have to do. Is one, sort of go into the settings and make sure you have some settings correct. You want to have auto next on, this on in the bottom right when you go into gameplay. You want to have auto replay off as well because these two contradict. If you have auto replay on while doing world lines, it will just keep playing the same stage over and over again. I've run into that issue. And you want to have chaos mode in the bottom left here enabled. What this does is it makes the waves go by much, much faster. They come out quicker, the waves end quicker. There's no reason not to use it. Um, so you should always be using it whenever you're clearing world lines or doing the portals or anything. You should always just have the setting on as a general rule of thumb, just to clear things quicker. But let me explain the team first, right? So we have Escanor just because I was sort of testing things out. I was seeing how fast I can clear things with Escanor, but I ran into a lot of issues with him. I'll get into the issues of why Escanor doesn't really work later, even with the probably Vanguard Familiar and Memoria. I haven't tested it because I don't have both of them yet, but I will get into that later in the video. And basically the the team setup is pretty simple. You have any damage unit, any general damage unit. Escanor is good because with the Urza Memoria, he can burn through shields and only on certain weathers. So it's it's good to have that as just a general damage unit for when just one unit isn't enough. It usually won't be because there are multiple paths on a lot of these levels. And the next unit is Uryu. So Uryu is actually very helpful. He's an old unit, and what he does is he can attack anywhere outside of his range. This will, one, allow you to attack on multiple path um, stages without placing a unit on each path, and also deal with any leaks. His damage is very low. He's a very old unit. I'm hoping they add a Vanguard Memoria for him, or not a Vanguard Memoria, a Vanguard Familiar for him, because he's quite useful in world lines, and he's also just a cool unit in concept. But yeah, you have Uryu to deal with. The god statue is something that you have to deal with, where they have the 4 statues you have to kill, and then you can actually deal damage to the boss. That is another reason for Uryu, but you have to put him on weakest whenever you want him to do that, because he'll always target just the boss. Anyways, next unit is Speedwagon. You just use him with his, ideally, a Yuruzu familiar and his own young entrepreneur, with Jack of All or just Fortune 3 works. And then basically what you do is you press start on these levels. Hold on, let me finish the team explanation first, and then I'll get into how to actually do the setup. But the rest of the team is just Zoro, like I explained, because he's very cheap and he has very early full AoE, which is good. You know, slow SPA as well, fast clearing. And then Shanks. Shanks can be replaced here. Any decent unbound or unknown unit will work. Ideally, a cheap one like Vanguard Sung Jin Woo or Sid that does a decent amount of damage that can clear things. Because on the infinite Tsukuyomi stages, and remember, this is for people who don't have the new Escanor Vanguard Familiar and the Memoria that disables the weather and makes you not have to worry about that stuff. Because right in the situation you do, so you have to oblige by the rules and only place those two elements. But now that I'm done talking about the team setup, and by the way, you can fill this empty slot with another damage unit you like. You know, Luffy's good, Ichigo's pretty good. Any relatively cheap damage unit. You can even use Escanor if you want. Not Escanor, but I was thinking Madara. You probably shouldn't use Madara just because he's so expensive and he's only a single hit. And there's never really going to be an enemy that tanky that you need like a crazy DPS for. But anyways, what you want to do for most stages, this is the part I'm going to mark in the bookmarks. You can actually skip to this part if you just want to hear, you know, how to do the strategy, is you want to have this team, right? You don't need Monarch on Zoro, but it's very helpful. And you pretty much just press yes on the play. Then you go into autoplay. And ideally you have an autoplay pretty close to the track, so Zoro will go first. And how you make Zoro always get placed first is you go into configure and then you scroll down to wherever your speedwagon is. You go into this edit right here and then go to minimum wave. This will make it so on wave 1 it'll always place Zoro first, because without it, speedwagon will always be placed before Zoro, and you don't want that. But basically doing this allows you to place Zoro first in the world lines and clear these waves much faster. Then the rest of them will get placed down, they'll get auto upgraded, all that. And you know, you can just, what I like to do is just tab out, watch some YouTube, maybe eat some food, be a big back, you know, just do something else in the background, talk to your friends. But you don't have to commit your full attention to this like you would have to if you were using Escanor. Now, what I want to get into now that I'm done with that team, with how to actually perform that, is what to do in specific scenarios, is or special scenarios rather, is one is certain weathers that don't allow burning. So those weathers that don't allow burning is where Escanor, you can't really use him because most of his versatility is in his burn. Um, you know, he has such a slow SPA and pretty garbage AoE for his first few attacks that you can't really use him much in certain world line stages. So that's one of the problems with him. But also Infinite Tsukuyomi, like I mentioned, what you want to do is pretty much just place your. You guys saw me do it earlier in the video, but you place a farm or two, maybe upgrade them, and then place whatever your unbound or unknown unit is, and then they'll almost always be able to solo it. You know, these world lines are very easy to do. They're sort of just time consuming is their whole thing. With the new chaos mode, it's a lot faster, so it's good that they did that. But and the last final exception to normal stages is multipath stages. This is not a multipath stage, but for the first several world lines stages for this season 13.5 Eternal Adversaries, you will run into multiple stages that have multiple paths. You know, the Guilty Gear EX stage, which has 3 paths, the Naruto Destroyed Hidden Village map, which has 2 paths, the Fate map where Gilgamesh spawns is another map with 2 stages. Well, actually 3, because one of them spawns the boss. And what you want to do for those ones is so specifically for the ones with multiple stages, the most the most paths a stage will any have at this moment in time is 3. And what you want to do is just place Zoro like normally. You don't really want to press autoplay because you don't know where it's going to go. It might go in the wrong spot. The units will be spawning in on one of the paths, maybe both, but you just choose one of them. You place your Zoro. He'll give you enough money to place another unit. You place a farm or two, and then what you do is you just place the rest of your damage units on those 3 paths. Placing Uryu helps as well because Uryu will help you with any leaks, any units that go out of your range or things like that. And you know, even though you think like, oh, these enemies are so weak, you know, they only have like 100k HP and my units are out here doing 400k, I shouldn't be worried. But you need to remember that each stage has its own weather properties with different debuffs and buffs. that will affect your units ultimately. And a lot of them debuff fire units, which does affect Zoro and makes them unable to kill them. So yeah, you want to be able to deal with that. But that's pretty much just how you run it down for the multi-path stages. You just place your units at the start of the paths, and that's what this empty slot is for. Any good DPS unit that you want to place at the start of the path helps. The rest of this team will deal with that even if you don't have that last slot. And yeah, but that's all the exceptions for the normal stages. Now I just wanted to get into why Escanor doesn't exactly work. So the main problems with Escanor, I have touched on this a little bit about the fact that some weathers, I think rain is one of them. Um, some weathers will disable burning entirely. Now, Escanor, his kind of whole utility is in his burn. I've said this before, kind of a broken record here, forgive me, but the reason you use Escanor is because he burns them. What you can do is you can place Escanor kind of outside of the map a little bit here. His range will trickle onto the track, and then as soon as they leave his range, part of his passive is that they will take 100% of his damage as burn damage. And with the Urza Memoria, hopefully you guys have that, it will allow damage over time to bypass shields, which will just kill any enemy even if they have shield, because they're weak in this Worldlines game mode. And the problem is, if there's a weather that disables burning, you cannot do that. Another problem with it is just multipath stages. For the first, like, maybe 5 stages of this world line specifically, they were all multipath stages. And it's such a burden to have to, I don't want to be like this chud that's all like, oh, I hate playing the game, I hate doing this, but it's really just annoying having one unit and having to deal with 3 paths. It's not efficient. It's unpleasant to deal with. And the new Memoria and Vanguard Familiar, they kind of tried to address that by making it so whenever you sell him and replace him, he retains his upgrades. But the problem is you still have to sell and replace him. You still have to do all that tedious work of selling him, looking where the next units are, placing him, selling him again, placing him where the next units are, and then realizing where you just sold him from, there's more enemies, so you have to, it's annoying. Nobody really wants to do it. So even though the new Escanor Vanguard Familiar and his Memoria are good and all, I just think that they don't really they didn't really think it through that much. Like, I don't think anyone really tested it through world lines, because otherwise people would have just ran into the issue that I just ran into. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Um Thank you guys for watching, if you did watch this far. Just a kind of unscripted random video about helping people get through world lines, because I know people kind of dread this. It is quite a headache, but we do need these units, I guess, bro. And yeah, I will see you guys later.